This conference will now be recorded.
Please. It's recording, sir.
We're good to go. All right. Good morning, everybody. It is 9:33 a.m. Wednesday, October 4th, and we will call this meeting of the Killeen-Temple MPO Technical Advisory Committee meeting to order and open up the floor for public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to make public comment? Is there anybody online that wishes to make public comment?
There's 4 individuals online, but nobody's mentioned making public.
Fantastic. All right, we'll move straight to agenda item 3, which is a staff update. This is pages 8 through 9 in your packet. As you'll see on the screen and in your packet, our list of upcoming KTMPO meetings is listed there for your reference. All meetings are scheduled for 9:30 a.m. here at the SICCOG offices, except for the Freight Advisory Committee meetings, which are held at 2:30 p.m. on their respective dates. Other updates that we have are the 2023 KTMPO project call. That application process is open. If you haven't received something from staff, please let us know. But from looking in this room, I believe everybody's received the information they needed and started putting information in their folders. Those applications, like I said, are due Friday, October 27th. If you have questions about the project call, you can either reach out to me or James directly. And then there's also a current MTP update timeline in the packet.
It's online.
It's online, not in the packet. The TIP and MTP, we had a couple of administrative amendments. Project C45-02, the SH9 turnarounds. There was a decrease in funding in our TIP and MTP by $117,600. This was required in order for this to match the approved amount that is listed in the UTP that was approved. And then project W3507, which is Loop 363, Lucius McKelvey Industrial. That let date has been accelerated and changed from 2026 to 2024. Other updates that I have are Judge Miller and Councilmember Long were re-elected chair and vice chair of the policy board. And James, Connie, and myself attended the AMPO conference last week in beautiful Cleveland. There was a lot of good information there. We're still trying to wrap our heads around all the information that we got. There was a standalone policy committee on the national level to kind of work through and talk through some priorities possibly for MPOs. And at the national level, they're currently working on a strategic plan, which is kind of difficult because all MPOs in all states are all their own different kind of creature. So those are things that are going on really at the national level. The next meetings for AMPO will be the spring fly-in in March. I'll be going to that. That's a policy and technical committee meeting in DC. And then there's a technical symposium, I believe, in April that James and maybe 1 or 2 other staff will attend. Other than that, we have the air quality readings, which were 80 and 79 parts per billion. With that, I'm open to any questions, or have I missed anything, James?
Victor, did you want to hop in here?
Yeah, I think you can do, it's not staff, but
Lucius McKelvey?
Yeah, there was an additional update that Victor has for the classification.
Yeah, so as you heard, the Lucius McKelvey Industrial project did get accelerated by administration. We talked about that in the past few months as far as the right side program, about backfill projects that have failed throughout the state. This was one that was completely ready to go. had no risks, so they decided to go ahead and pull it up and move it into February. As far as the cove relief route, we're still working on that. We're waiting on an interstate access specification report from FHWA to get approved so we can move it up if it gets selected, which it probably will once we get that done. But the main thing that we need to talk about is functional classifications of roadways. And just a real crash course on that. Every roadway has a functional classification from 1 through 7. It's a hierarchy, 1 being interstate roadways and 7 being local roads. So there's a bunch of levels in between there. So the Loop 363 project, the Cove relief route, and then we also have the Rogers relief route once that's complete. All 3 of those roadways are going to be functioning as functional classification 2, which is other freeways and expressways because they're going to be access controlled. All 3 of them are functioning right now as principal arterials. Part of the FHWA process and TPP in Austin is when you have these functional classification changes within the MPO boundaries, they want the MPOs to be initiating this request to redesignate or a new designation, for instance, the Rogers relief route. And so I know the timing is kind of bad and we weren't able to get it on the TAC agenda, but we are preparing to get this in front of the policy board in 2 weeks. What TxDOT's requesting from the MPO for this package is basically a letter of recommendation and then a resolution from the policy board stating that yes, for all 3 of these roadways, we would like to redesignate or designate them as functional classification 2, which is other freeways and expressways. And FHWA, I know they want it done before construction starts, so this is something that we need to get on, especially with the 363 project getting accelerated in February. So that's kind of where we're at. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I don't have anything, but I do, I guess, want to echo what Victor said. Due to timing, typically all the requests come through the TAC and then, we get your recommendation for approval or your comment that we can share with policy board. Due to the timing of this request from TxDOT, we're not going to be able to do that. So you may or you will see on the policy board agenda and to consider and take action on the functional classification requests through TxDOT and federal highways at the next policy board meeting.
Questions or comments on it?
Does the city need to do anything, or can it start right at the MPO?
So I did get a letter from Mayor Davis.
Okay.
And then I'm working on a letter from Judge Miller for Compass Cove. And then basically, I think with those and the letter and resolution from the MPO, we should be good at that point.
Any other questions on anything on staff update? All right. Seeing none, we'll move to agenda item 4, which is an action item regarding approval of the minutes from the September 6th meeting. This is pages 12 through 14 in your packet. Are there any updates, revisions needed to the minutes? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? No? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion carries. All right, agenda item 5 is a discussion and action item regarding recommendation to approve an amendment to the congestion management process, pages 16 in your packet. James.
Thanks, Ryan. We brought this to everybody last month, bringing it back. If you have questions about the amendment, it's on our website, and I have a copy here. You can answer those. We're currently in the middle of our public comment period. We are having our public meeting tomorrow in Harker Heights. To my knowledge, we haven't received any comments on the appendix yet. And it will be going before policy board in 2 weeks for their approval. We did send a copy to FHWA for their review, and they said that they thought it looked good and they didn't have any comments. So once the policy board says it's good, this should satisfy the corrective action that we got from our FCR.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion. And the action is to, consider recommendation to approve an amendment to the CMP.
Make a motion that we approve, or recommend approving an amendment to the CMP.
Have a motion? A second? Any further discussion, questions, comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, that motion carries. All right, agenda item 6 is a discussion and action item regarding recommendation to approve the proposed revisions to the KTMPO Bylaws, pages 18 through 27. A few months back, the chair of the policy board stood up a working group to look into revision of the possible bylaws. We met a total of 2 times in person, I believe. Recommended changes were included and have been included in this packet. I think the main material changes that everybody needs to be aware of that are being proposed to the bylaws right now are, according to the old bylaws and population counts, Temple would be receiving another seat on the policy board because they crossed that threshold. There was some addition of language in knowing that we are still looking at boundary expansion in the future that could possibly go up into Coryell County. There was a request to add some language to ensure that the incarcerated population is not included in population numbers for membership. So that takes that big swath of correctional facilities up there in Gatesville and make sure that their 10,000 or however many their population is up there is not included for additional seats on the policy board. We proposed creation of a small and rural representative on the TAC, not the policy board, just the TAC. This would be basically one member selected from any of the what is it, 7 or 10 smaller jurisdictions that don't currently have a member on the TAC. This would be one combined member to represent all of them. And that process would be basically they would get a letter of support or recommendation that would go to the policy board. And if we had more than one person that was interested or got more than one letter, the policy board would make the appointment for the small and rural representative. And this individual would serve a 1-year term on the TAC. There was discussion at the last policy board meeting to add language to specify that the KTMPO director or our designee will fill the role of chairperson for the TAC meetings because that wasn't referenced in there, what that structure looked like. And then we added language requiring a review of the bylaws at least once every 5 years or within 6 months of a release of relevant census data. So with that, the proposed bylaw revisions are included in the packet. If you have any questions, I'm open to that or any feedback. We're open to questions and conversation about the bylaws revisions if there are any, the proposed bylaws revisions.
These are recommended by the working group?
Yes.
The bylaws that were in the packet, was that the final recommended, or was that the old set?
This is the recommendations. This is would be the new version, including all the recommendations. Yeah.
So, see some kind of legislative format.
If we can send that out after, if you would like.
What's the timing on this? Is it like today and then the policy board next time we're done? Or
Yeah, it would be, we're requesting action today and then it would go to the policy board for action at their upcoming October meeting. And of course, we can receive, feedback on this and provide that at the policy board meeting as well. So if there are questions or anything like that, we're more than happy to share that at the policy board meeting.
Those are a lot of cases.
Good for it. We're gaining the seat, so I don't want to be the one that runs it. I'm not sure.
I will say that there was conversation in the working group about the seat, and all members that were on the working group agreed that based on the way the previous policy, the previous bylaws were written, that was the desire, was if that 75,000 population threshold was met, which is why we, the working group chose to move forward with the addition of the seat.
So the 75,000, that's already in the bylaws?
Correct.
Equations in there.
There's a population breakdown, correct.
So how do we get to the 75?
Good. So that's before my time, clearly.
Oh, that's.
Yeah, but there were, the last time the MPO expanded, there were a lot of factors that were taken into account, and that's the formula that was devised. We didn't really feel at the working group level that there was a need to reopen and redevelop a new formula specifically to keep membership as it currently stood.
And I don't want either. I don't want either. I'm just curious about it.
Any other questions, concerns, feedback? Anybody need additional time to review?
I will say that Copper's Cove is probably going to exceed 40,000 this coming January. We're really close to that right now.
And I think there was
it's-
discussion on that too, which is why we implemented the review and revision. And we understand that the populations are going to continue to go up, and at some point that formula will have to be reviewed because we don't need a policy board of 55 people sitting. But
It does say it's based on the most recent decennial census in that first block.
One of the breakdowns on population, I remember 10 to 40.
10 to 40, 40 to 75, and then over 75.
1 and 2 and then 3.
Yeah.
So small towns have to work through their county representative.
that's right. That's how it was developed. With the exception of this new TAC position, they would work through the county rep as well as the small and rural rep.
ACS and the required review sections.
Right, that was added on purpose because it West End only comes out every so often, so they wanted to use the ACS in between. Any other questions, comments, discussion? This is an action item to consider recommending approval.
Okay, fine, I'll make, I'm going to make the motion, I'll make it.
Go ahead and make your motion.
I'll let you do it, Bob.
No, I'm not gonna make it.
Move that we approve the bylaws as presented by staff.
Okay, I have a motion.
Recommend approval.
I have a motion,
I'll second it.
and I have a second.
I have a question.
All right, yes.
So why not have a small town representative on the MPO? I mean, on the policy, what was the conversation behind that? And I don't want to, beef up the group or dilute it with more people, but you got it on attack, why not have it on policy?
Oh, because the small town representative would be a staff person. Policy board is required to be elected officials. We could add something in, I guess, to add an elected official from one of those. There are some other organizations that do a joint member, I believe, Belcad does something similar. I just don't know what that would look like. That was the whole purpose behind it, was the elected.
So the working group wasn't sure that they could elect an elected official from a small town
To
to participate on the policy board?
Correct. Any other questions? We have a motion and a second. Questions, comments, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Carries. Thank you. All right, agenda item, where are we at, 7? Yeah. Agenda item 7 is a discussion and action item regarding adoption of the KTMPO 2020 Adjusted Urbanized Area Recommendations from TxDOT, pages 30 through 31. James.
So just a little background, I'm sure you're all aware that census, after every census, they takes them some time, but they look at urban areas and populations and then urban areas, and they make, in their best judgment, based on a bunch of criteria, designate where the urban area boundaries are, and then send those out. And once TxDOT gets them, after every census, they look at those urban areas, which are usually can be disjointed because of the census criteria, and they look to smooth those so it's more contiguous, and the boundaries are, they use like rivers or roadways, so it's easier for planning purposes. And then they send those to the MPO for consideration, especially in the event where the smooth urban boundary would exceed the current MPO boundary, which is the case for 2 small portions of our MPO. Both of them are on the northwestern area. One of them is inside Fort Cavazos, and then the other one is in a small piece of undeveloped land just north of Copper's Cove. Okay, could you pull up the map on the screen?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, zoom in a little bit to like the Copper's Cove area. So you can see the red line is the current boundary, and the purple is the smooth area. And there's two sections. That one kind of looks like a little wave that exceeds the Copper's or Fort Cavazos there. Okay, could you use your maybe I have my laser. Oh, I have my laser.
There we go. Oh.
Okay. That's good. That's good, Tay, thank you. So this,
Doesn't seem to like it when you use the laser.
well, this area right here is on. We good? Ellie doesn't like the laser.
Doesn't like something.
Can you use your mouse, Tay,
Yeah,
and point out those two areas? Just hover over them.
like in the Cove area?
Right above your mouse where the urban area exceeds. Keep going up a little bit to your left. Right
Little
there.
bitty spot.
So that section between the red boundary and the line is the proposed urban area, new urban area. And then over to the right a little bit where it juts out above. Keep going over, Tay. Keep going. Yeah, that area right there. So those two areas are what TxDOT's proposing for the Killeen-Temple smooth urbanized area. If we adopt this, we would be required to adjust our boundary to cover those areas. Staff thinks for both of them, it's such a small adjustment and they're in Fort Cavazos territory, which is kind of it's a lot of ways outside our planning jurisdiction for the most part. We don't see the benefit in moving to agree with the smooth urban areas. And with the discussions that we've been having about possibly expanding to cover all of Coryell and Lemon Passes, it would result in this being a moot point.
James?
Yes, go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, to adjust the MPO boundary requires the governor to sign. Approve it.
Yes, I think we would have to.
So basically, to adjust these, we would have to tell TxDOT, yes, we're good with the smooth process, please, this is what we want our boundary to look like. And we have to do all that by the end of October so that it can go through TxDOT's process and get the approval. The same thing we're gonna have to do with, should we decide to expand. For these two small areas, staff really don't see a benefit in expanding the MPO just for that additional area, especially with it being Fort Cavazos. We don't do a whole lot on Fort Cavazos MPO related planning. Of course, we have on here.
I mean, we did Highway 9, but that was kind of it wasn't really on for it as much as it passed through it. Maybe that's split hairs.
So,
TxDOT is seeking the MPO's concurrence on the boundaries. I mean, they sent this to us, but they need our concurrence before they send it to FHWA for approval. Or if we disagree, then have a meeting with them and share our reasons for not concurring and ask them to adjust back to the current boundaries.
Since we have our Fort Cavazos that area that's you described it as the wave, what's contained in there that triggered that being included in the urban boundary? I mean, now is it just more barracks and?
It's hard to tell from here, but it's kind of like it's the northwest side of the main cantonment area. And it's approaching up into the training area, that's a big issue. Fort Cavazos doesn't give up training.
and
It only takes an act of Congress.
And I think what they do is they look for some logical boundary cutoff for planning ease. Right now, we already have one in our MPO boundaries. Our bigger concern, I think, was that smaller area.
When I get back to my office, I can make this closer.
I think it's between North Range Road and South Range Road.
So see where the red MPO boundary follows, just like that follows this and that little wave, that's gonna be.
Yeah, and I don't know what they use as the cutoff for that, a road.
Is it Tank Destroyer?
That's West Range.
It may be Tank Destroyer too.
No, it's way north of this.
I don't think you gain anything by giving this, if you're gonna take in all of Coryell County anyways, eventually.
Right.
Do we have a time frame of when that possible expansion might be?
The actual full boundary
Full
expansion?
county, yeah.
No, we're still having those discussions, and of course, I'm still waiting for that information from TxDOT, so.
So it sounds like one of the possible scenarios is to say, sure, we'll call that the UZA, but we're not changing our boundary at this time. Is that going to throw a gasket in somebody's?
I think I have to go double check the legislation, but we are required by law to include the entire urbanized area
Right.
within our boundary. So if we approve, if we concur, then we would be required to change our boundaries to include those areas.
So
That
here's,
particular area, I mean, there's no housing there. There's no soldier housing or even civilian housing. It's right on the edge of the training area.
is there anything on that, Bobby, where, how we?
Well, there's a transit hub that we've been working with
Right.
Fort Cavazos in that area with the expansion of the railroad facilities,
Right.
things of that nature. So it's more of a commercial industrial area that's being planned right now.
Which the development, to me, that equals urban development.
Yeah.
And with knowing that, I mean, it may be beneficial for that little piece to be included.
It would be, yeah.
But
Just one and not the other.
right, with, I mean, yeah, we can concur with that one and not with the
Yeah.
way of Fort Cavazos.
I don't know what's going on with the city of Killeen in that particular area, if there's any urbanization going on or a new master plan or something. I don't have any idea.
Oh, the wave?
Yeah.
That wave is all, you know where Old Ironsides and Helen Wheels is?
Oh, okay.
Motor pool, that's north of that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That's all Cavazos. So.
I mean, if you look at the aerial, you can see that, yes, it's paved and built up. So there you go. It's built up, it's urbanized, it's in the boundary. Okay. But in terms of actual functioning for the MPO, it makes no difference whether that's in or out of the MPO boundary. But I still feel like we're back to the question of if we're going to expand or think we're going to expand into all of Coriolis passes, both of these become, why would we want to go through expanding, changing the boundary, go through that process, change the MPO boundary for the cove section, and then turn around 6 months or whatever later, and then go through that same whole process again to take the rest of it? I guess the only question is, if we decline this, which is TAC, and we recommend it to the policy board, what wrench does that throw into that transit hub? Because I don't want to jeopardize that, just because I don't want to go through two processes.
I don't really know, but if there's a need to have it, you know, of course, staff are happy to go through the exercise, and boundary expansion those conversations could continue on for another year, depending on the speed of getting our information and our report.
I mean, we do need to keep James out of the bars.
So, I mean, like we said, we're happy to concur with one and not the other.
So based on this, that little area it's to the west of Old Georgetown Road, so it would not affect any of this section is already within the urban boundary there. It's definitely within the MPO boundary, this whole area for this project. I think probably that little area there is between Old Georgetown and North First Street, I think. There's some neighborhood just to the south of it. But it looks undeveloped on satellite.
And that's on Fort Cavazos property too.
I can't tell where from here on this map where Fort Cavazos property ends, but
It's at FM 116.
yeah, it's to the east of 116.
Okay.
It's like it's bounded by 116, Old Georgetown, and SH9.
I thought I heard you say that federal law requires us to include all the urbanized areas. So if we said no, or let's say if we said yes, let's move it. Does the red line have to be moved on Fort Cavazos? Does that have to have Secretary of Defense approval and Congress and all this sort of thing, go to Joe's desk and all that sort of thing? Is that kind of like a ministerial thing? It just goes and gets signed, comes back,
I'm not exactly sure what that process would look like because
including the governor?
that totally covers, that expansion is all Fort Cavazos. So I really don't know.
Is there a downside to moving the line outside of waiting for the overall change of the boundaries that we've been talking about, which may take a year? Is there a downside to moving the right line? Both Coppers Cove and on Fort Cavazos?
I think, to move the line up into Fort Cavazos, we're not going to plan in that area, so it just doesn't make sense. For the other area, there may be some planning activities that the MPO can be part of.
So it's not an automatic process that, just because the urbanized areas are such that the line doesn't adjust with it.
Right, and we have to remember the proposed smoothing, that's because of the urbanized areas, just to give a good cutoff. Our urbanized areas are still well within that red line. So if we did not concur, the urbanized area would not change as well as the MPO boundary.
And the adjusted boundaries shown here are bigger. It's bigger than the raw boundaries that the census designates.
This is what the census would pick up on the new UZA.
No, so this is from TxDOT. The census is already designated the UZAs. TxDOT has taken the TPP, they've taken that data and they've looked at, okay, this is what the census has, here's what your smooth was before, now let's look at where the development has occurred and expand the boundaries so that they, instead of being blocky and skipping areas, because the census urban areas do that, they're, especially on the edges, they can get kind of wonky. The TxDOT just said, let's make this hard boundary, which it's the county for, they move it so it's against roads and it includes all of the areas. It's more smooth rather than just including pocket neighborhoods, which the census urban areas will do. Staff's recommendation. I think our recommendation is to not concur, to request that we keep the same. I think even another downside, and it's not a huge downside, but there would be some administrative work because we'd have to to change the boundary on all of our documents, and even a small adjustment, it can affect previous planning activities because those areas weren't taken into account.
That's best, the boundaries are just the future.
Yeah.
It's better use of that time.
Yeah. I think that's where I'm going back to my first thought is if you think there's a chance you guys are going to have to adjust the boundary and do all the document modifications, let's just do that once. And I don't know where in the documents, put a note that we don't concur with the UZAs that, the smooth UZAs, but that we acknowledge that we are going to expand the boundary to include them at some point. Maybe the answer is, you're not Mr. Right. You're just not Mr. Right now.
Do you have concerns about that other one, Bobby? That's got a little spot.
I know exactly where it's at. So what they're doing is they're smoothing out off all the existing roadways.
Right.
It's this little piece that wasn't. So it's just Highway 9. It's just this little section. The old boundary followed this road down here, and they cut to the west. Went up and stay Highway 116.
Yes.
So they're just going to include this piece that has nothing in it. They're smoothing it because it's an existing roadway that they're following as the boundary versus nothing that was here before. I just think for us.
Yeah, because I was here when we made this movie 10 years ago. And it's each night you exist. So they just followed the insulation boundary. But you're right, census prefers to follow something.
That's the same thing they're doing on the wave section of there.
Well, I see it as a future urbanizing areas. And so I would recommend that we do that, show that.
Yeah, we can.
Like I said,
I'll go with Bobby. I mean, I kind of can see it both ways.
if there's a need, we're
Yeah.
more than happy. What I don't see the need for is the part for Cavazos.
Right.
At all.
I mean, let's say what it is. Cove is going to be the most directly affected by this. So if Bobby, you take the lead, tell us what you do.
I move to approve that section that affects Copper Cove, and it is going to be an urbanized area. We've gotten interest from developers looking at that piece too in the past, so I think will go and be an urbanized area in the future. I would recommend we support that change.
And just the one, or?
And the other ones, I'll follow along with staff. If you don't feel it's necessary, then, I don't know. What y'all think?
How much lumber is it going to cost TxDOT if it's different way if we do one, not the other? Smart things.
Also, don't know how much this process is.
Yes.
Charles and Pio.
I mean, if we're going to do one, then let's do both.
Yeah, it's the same.
Yeah, it's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So is the motion to concur with the proposed changes from TxDOT?
Yes.
And I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion, questions, comments?
Yeah, before we go on, I'm not saying don't do it or do it. Just to be clear, this is the area that's in Fort Cavazos, and it's still good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think so. In my discussions with them, in the future. They're taking act Congress, but.
You're trying to do another trade?
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
We have had discussions with that. So, which is one I'm taking off the table.
One with the bypass took how many years?
5.5. We got it done.
Yep.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. No further questions, comments, concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, agenda item 8 is a discussion item only regarding updates on the KTMPO work groups. We referenced the bylaws work group earlier. James, you have the other updates.
The safety work group met after the policy board meeting in September, and staff had done some research and discovered that no other MPOs are really setting their own safety targets. So we're in pretty much uncharted waters. Staff are doing some looking at the state, how they set, what methodology they use to kind of base something off of that for our next meeting, which will be after policy board in October, I believe. So not too much to update other than we're in uncharted waters and we'll be trailblazing, sort of.
And I apologize, I did have to leave early that meeting, but I think the consensus when I left was that whether we set our own targets or we just continue to support TxDOT's targets, the important thing is that we're looking at the crash patterns, the crash trends, the numbers, the raw numbers, as well as the rates. You know, looking at how many crashes per mile, how many miles traveled, how many, annual daily traffic volumes. That we're identifying the areas that there is concern and identifying projects that could mitigate that. Whether we set the targets or not is almost an academic exercise. That's why I said it's that phrase today. But the point is we're looking at it and we're trying to bring those numbers down. So I think that was where we left off when I.
Any questions on the working groups? Seeing none, we will move to agenda item 9 regarding an update on the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program. James.
We have started, our consultant, Killeen has started working. We had a meeting with them yesterday. They're moving along with data gathering and setting up a plan to gather data, and they're working on developing a high injury network, which will be used as a basis for some of the project implementation phase later. We're also still looking for champions for safety task force that will be set up. So if you're interested, let us know. I think they're planning to have like a safety task force summit with about 15 or so individuals during the first 2 weeks of November. Or if you know of anyone else who may be interested in safety and would like to participate, let staff know. We'll be providing them some recommendations too. But that's all I have for the Streets and Roads for All grant.
So if you have an interest in being a champion, please let us know. Like James said, we don't know what that entails yet. We've got a couple of people ask. Other than that, we're moving right along. They've worked and started. They possibly are coming close to completion on another dashboard that kind of mirrors the KTMPO dashboard, but it's for the whole SICOG region to show the crashes and all of that.
Yes.
So we are making progress. Like I said, if you want to be more involved or if you have specific questions, you can always reach out to James or I. Let us know. There are going to be multiple meetings held in the counties and jurisdictions, and they are working with another group to do the in-time tracking and the public involvement portions of the plan. And of course, we're still kind of toward the beginning, but the intent would be for us to have an approved, adopted, acceptable plan for USDOT and federal highways with possibly 6 to 8 projects listed with all the accompanying and required information to submit for the next IIJA project call, or the Safe Streets and Roads for All project call. And then we would continue moving forward with identifying some smaller projects with completion of the grant by the end of next year, I believe, maybe a little bit further out. But that is the intent. It's going to be a couple phases. The first phase would be to identify six to 8 major projects after they've gone through their data and had conversations with stakeholders and things like that, and get information put together for actual projects to compete for the next funding cycle. That I'm, of course, open to any questions. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We're happy to come present the jurisdictions if you'd like us to. If not, then we'll just stay back here and keep our mouth shut. So. Questions?
We will have you out to the council workshop.
You're breaking up.
Sorry.
Just let us know when.
Yes.
Anything else? All right. Moving along. Agenda item 10 is a discussion item regarding an update on the possible MPO boundary expansion. We talked about this briefly earlier. I'm still waiting on TxDOT. I'm going to send, since it's the beginning of October, I'll send another request. I think most of the TxDOT district concerns were relating to how this may impact them and us financially. Additionally, of course, there were questions when we started these conversations on how an expansion may financially impact KTMPO as an organization. We don't know what that looks like yet. I would anticipate that in talking with other MPOs that have expanded or are talking about expanding, we wouldn't see an increase in planning dollars. We would just be able to use those on the wider swath for our whole MPO area like we do now. It would just cover Coryell and Lampasas. Construction dollars, I anticipate it would take, because of the process we use to get the new jurisdictions up to speed, there would probably be and this is just me estimating, a 1 to 2 year, a 1 to 2 cycle project call before any of them were even anywhere close to submitting for projects. That's just a rough estimate. I know people were concerned about them, competition for projects. And the other thing is, like I said, how it impacts the TxDOT districts and their CAT for urban and rural pots of money that have already been designated into UTP. If those funds can be grandfathered in, or if they have to take it from somewhere else, we just don't know what that looks like. So those are kind of the financial questions we're looking for before we bring something significant back to the board for update. Any questions on that? All right. Seeing none, we will move to agenda item 11 is a discussion item regarding public input received through September 2023, James.
We do have a few public comments, some Facebook comments and some in-person questions. I think the one of most significance was a BPAC member at their meeting last week with some comments on bikeability and wanting to do an analysis within the KTMPO region for a walkability, bikeability study. The full comments are in your packet, and there's a little summary in the PowerPoint slide.
Keller and I spoke after BPAC. Temple did something similar when we did our mobility master plan. But what he's looking for, somebody has built this tool, and then if we use the same tool, that gives us a metric to measure ourselves against other cities. It's one thing to just look at ourselves, run our own analysis. now we're comparing apples to apples with like-sized cities in Texas and across the country, if we can figure out a way to use this tool. I spoke to our GIS department. I don't know when, they'll have the time for someone with the knowledge to use the tool. But certainly it'd be wonderful to know that answer.
That's good. Any other feedback, questions, comments on the public comment or public input?
When it says in person, does that mean that it, like, for the Harker Heights comment, does that mean that it was necessarily made like at a meeting? Or was it a comment made to a committee member? Do you know?
I think Anita,
It was a comment made to me, as I'm a staff person, and I was recruiting individuals to come to our BPAC meeting and explaining the vision of the BPAC, and they asked me that question.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering how it came up. I'll forward it on to Christina so that she can address it, but I just didn't know if it was at another committee meeting or if it was. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, seeing none, we will move to agenda item 12, which is member comments. Any member comments? No comments from Connie? This is her last meeting, so we wish her well. She will be relocating to somewhere in deep Alabama. I don't know, but we appreciate what she's done and wish her well. Any other member comments? All right, seeing none. Agenda item 13, we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.